listeners to a special journey into a tale of unwavering loyalty and endearing love. Settle in, get comfortable, and prepare to be moved by The Graveyard Watcher, a dog's eternal love. Please remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and let us know in the comments where you are listening from. Your support means the world. Now, let the story begin. The old graveyard lay nestled on the outskirts of Blackwood, a quiet town that seemed to cling to its traditions as stubbornly as the ivy clung to the ancient chapel walls. It was a place of weathered stone and whispering trees, where the past held court and the present trod lightly. And within its hallowed grounds, a silent, furry sentinel kept an eternal watch. Barnaby was a dog of indeterminate breed, though hints of golden retriever and a sturdy mountain dog mingled in his shaggy, sun-bleached coat. His eyes, deep pools of amber, held a wisdom that belied his years and a sorrow that was almost human. He had arrived in the graveyard nearly 2 years ago, a ghostly figure materializing from the mist and grief, and had never truly left. His domain was a single grave, tucked away beneath the sprawling boughs of an ancient weeping willow. The headstone, though modest, bore a name etched with elegant simplicity, Alara Vance. And it was there, day in and day out, through scorching summers and biting winters, through pouring rain and gentle snowfall, that Barnaby maintained his tireless vigil. He was not a dog given to boisterous barks or playful antics. His movements were deliberate, his presence a quiet anchor in the shifting currents of time. He would lie curled at the base of the headstone, his nose tucked into his paws, occasionally raising his head to scan the rows of silent monuments, as if checking that the world outside had not intruded too harshly upon his sacred space. Sometimes he would rise and pace a slow circle around the grave, his tail, once probably a plume of joyous greeting, now a low-slung pendulum of quiet devotion. He would sniff at the dew-kissed grass, his senses attuned to the subtle shifts in the air, the faint scent of earth and memory. He never ventured far, never beyond the sightline of Alara's resting place. The world beyond the wrought iron gates held no appeal for him. His universe had shrunk to this small patch of hallowed ground, consecrated by love and loss. The local townsfolk, initially curious, had grown accustomed to Barnaby's presence. He was the graveyard dog, a fixture as permanent as the tombstones themselves. Children, on their way to school, would often slow their pace, peering through the railings, sometimes leaving a small offering of a half-eaten sandwich or a discarded toy at the gates. Barnaby, however, rarely acknowledged these gestures, his focus unwavering. His loyalty was a palpable thing, a force that seemed to ripple through the quiet air, a testament to a bond that even death could not sever. He was a living monument to a love that transcended the physical, a silent sermon on devotion preached amongst the graves. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of bruised purple and fiery orange, Barnaby would settle back down, his body a warm, furry weight against the cool stone. The stars would emerge, pinpricks of light in the vast canvas of night, and still he would watch, his amber eyes reflecting their distant glow, a steadfast guardian under the vast, indifferent sky. His story was a quiet one, told not in words, but in the enduring posture of his body, the steadfast gaze of his eyes, and the unwavering beat of his devoted heart. Barnaby's unwavering vigil was a mystery to some, a simple tale of animal instinct to others. But for those who knew Alara, even briefly, it was a poignant, heartbreaking echo of the extraordinary bond they had shared. Alara Vance had been a woman woven from kindness and quiet strength, her life a tapestry of small, meaningful gestures. She was a librarian, her days spent amongst the hushed whispers of turning pages, her nights often filled with the gentle presence of Barnaby at her feet as she read. She had found Barnaby as a scrawny, trembling pup abandoned on the side of a country road, his ribs showing through his thin fur, his eyes wide with fear. With a heart too big for her small frame, Alara had scooped him up, a decision that would forever alter the course of both their lives. From that moment, they were inseparable. Barnaby, once timid and wary, blossomed under Alara's gentle care. He became her shadow, her confidant, her furry protector. He would wait patiently outside the library during her shifts, his tail thumping a soft rhythm against the pavement when he heard her familiar footsteps approaching. He would accompany her on her long, contemplative walks through the nearby woods, his nose to the ground, occasionally nudging her hand for a reassuring pat. Their small cottage, nestled at the edge of town, was a haven of peace and mutual affection. Alara would talk to Barnaby as if he were a person, sharing her day's thoughts, her quiet joys, her occasional frustrations. And Barnaby, with his intelligent eyes and soft nudges, seemed to understand every word, offering silent comfort and unwavering presence. He was not just a pet. He was family, a soulmate in canine form. Alara had a particular fondness for the graveyard. She found a strange beauty in its quietude, and the stories etched into the stone, and the ancient trees that stood as silent witnesses to generations past. She would often bring Barnaby with her on Sunday afternoons, sitting on a weathered bench near the weeping willow, reading aloud from a book while Barnaby dozed at her feet. It was a peaceful ritual, a shared communion with history and nature. They would sometimes bring flowers, Alara carefully tending to a neglected grave, her hands gentle and respectful. Barnaby would watch her, an almost solemn expression on his face, as if he too understood the sacredness of the place. It was during one of these visits that Alara had pointed to the spot beneath the weeping willow, a gentle smile on her lips. "This is a beautiful spot, Barnaby," she had murmured, stroking his head. "So peaceful. I wouldn't mind spending eternity here." Barnaby, oblivious to the deeper meaning of her words, had simply leaned into her touch, content in her presence. Neither of them could have known how prophetic those words would be, or how profoundly they would shape Barnaby's future. Their life together was not one of grand adventures or dramatic events. It was a simple, profound existence built on mutual trust, unwavering affection, and the quiet comfort of shared companionship. It was a love story told in soft glances, gentle touches, and the silent understanding that passed between a woman and her dog. And it was this profound, uncomplicated love that now anchored Barnaby to the grave of Alara Vance, a bond so strong it defied the finality of death itself, transforming a quiet graveyard into a sacred testament to eternal devotion. The first winter after Alara's passing was a cruel test of Barnaby's resolve. The gentle autumn leaves, which had once formed a soft carpet around Alara's grave, had long since withered and blown away, replaced by a biting chill that seeped into the very bones. Snow fell in thick, silent blankets, transforming the familiar landscape of the graveyard into a stark, monochrome world. The ancient trees, stripped bare of their foliage, stood like skeletal sentinels against the perpetually gray sky. Most animals, driven by instinct, sought warmth and shelter. Squirrels retreated to their cozy nests, birds flew south, and even the hardy stray cats of Blackwood found refuge in abandoned sheds and under porches, but Barnaby remained. He burrowed into the snow beside Alara's headstone, his thick fur providing some insulation against the relentless cold. His body, once lean and agile, seemed to grow denser, more resilient, a living monument to stubborn loyalty. Frost often dusted his whiskers and eyelashes, turning him into a ghostly figure against the white backdrop. His breath plumed in the frigid air, each exhale a visible testament to his unwavering presence. The caretaker, Arthur, a man of few words but keen observation, noticed Barnaby's struggle. He would leave bowls of kibble and fresh water near the grave, often finding them untouched or only partially eaten. Barnaby's appetite seemed to diminish with the cold, his grief a hunger more profound than any physical need. Arthur, a man who had seen countless cycles of life and death within the graveyard walls, found himself strangely moved by the dog's steadfastness. He tried on several occasions to coax Barnaby into the small, heated shed he used for his tools, but the dog would merely offer a polite, almost imperceptible shake of his head, his amber eyes fixed on Alara's grave. It was a silent, gentle refusal, a reaffirmation of his chosen duty. Barnaby's routine adapted to the harsh conditions. He would rise stiffly in the mornings, shake off the accumulated snow, and then embark on a slow, careful patrol around Alara's grave, his paws leaving distinct imprints in the fresh powder. He would occasionally paw at the snow-covered ground, as if trying to uncover a familiar scent, a lost memory. The silence of winter was profound, broken only by the crunch of his paws or the mournful call of a distant crow. Yet, Barnaby seemed to find solace in this quietude, in the stark beauty of the sleeping world around him. His grief, rather than diminishing, seemed to deepen, becoming an integral part of the winter landscape. He was a living embodiment of enduring sorrow, a testament to a love that refused to be extinguished by the elements. The townspeople, observing Barnaby's unyielding vigil through the frosted panes of their windows, began to speak of him with a mixture of pity and awe. He was more than just a dog. He was a symbol, a poignant reminder of the power of unconditional love. Some worried for his health, fearing he wouldn't survive the relentless cold. Others simply watched, a silent respect growing in their hearts for the graveyard watcher. Barnaby, however, was oblivious to their concerns or admiration. His world was singular, focused entirely on the small patch of frozen earth beneath the weeping willow. He was a creature of habit, driven by an instinct far deeper than mere survival. He was driven by love, a love that transcended the physical, a love that warmed him even in the coldest depths of winter, binding him to Alara's memory with an unbreakable, invisible thread. Arthur Jenkins had been the caretaker of Blackwood Cemetery for over 30 years. He knew every grave, every winding path, every ancient tree like the back of his gnarled hand. He had seen countless families come and go, witnessed the ebb and flow of grief and remembrance, and maintained the quiet dignity of the place with a stoic dedication. But Barnaby, the graveyard dog, had introduced an unexpected variable into Arthur's meticulously ordered world. Initially, Arthur viewed Barnaby with a professional detachment. Another stray, he had thought, albeit a remarkably persistent one. He expected the dog to eventually wander off, drawn by the promise of warmer shelter or more readily available food. But Barnaby stayed. Day after day, week after week, month after month, the dog remained a steadfast fixture by Alara Vance's grave. Arthur began to observe him more closely, his practiced eye noticing the subtle nuances of Barnaby's behavior. He saw the way Barnaby would nuzzle the cold headstone, the way his ears would perk up at the distant sound of a passing car, only to droop again when it wasn't the one he seemed to be listening for. He noticed the dog's unwavering gaze, fixed on that single plot of earth, an intensity that spoke volumes without a single bark. Arthur, a widower himself, understood grief. He recognized the profound, silent sorrow that emanated from Barnaby. It wasn't just instinct. It was something deeper, something akin to human heartbreak. He started leaving out bowls of water and dog food, not in an attempt to lure Barnaby away, but as a silent acknowledgement of his presence, a gesture of respect for his enduring fidelity. Barnaby rarely approached Arthur directly. He would wait until the caretaker had moved on to another section of the graveyard before cautiously approaching the food, eating sparingly, always keeping one eye on Alara's grave. It was as if accepting too much human kindness might somehow dilute his sacred duty. Arthur respected this unspoken boundary. He never tried to pet Barnaby, never called out to him, never pressed too hard. He simply went about his work, a silent, solitary figure tending to the resting places of the departed, while Barnaby, an equally silent and solitary figure, tended to his own profound grief. Their interactions were minimal, yet filled with an unspoken understanding. A nod from Arthur, a brief glance from Barnaby. It was a shared vigil, two guardians of memory in their own distinct ways. As the seasons turned, Arthur began to feel a strange protectiveness towards the dog. He would check on Barnaby during severe weather, making sure he had access to whatever meager shelter the graveyard provided. He'd leave extra blankets near the willow tree during cold snaps, knowing Barnaby would likely ignore them, but feeling compelled to offer. He even found himself talking to Barnaby sometimes, quiet murmurs under his breath as he swept leaves or trimmed hedges. "Still here, old boy?" He'd ask, not expecting an answer, but finding comfort in the simple acknowledgement. Barnaby had become more than just a graveyard dog. He was a silent companion, a poignant reminder of the enduring power of love, even in the face of loss. And Arthur, a man who had thought he had seen all the forms of grief, found himself learning a new lesson in devotion from a scruffy, loyal dog who refused to abandon his post. The unspoken bond between Arthur and Barnaby deepened with the passing months. It wasn't a bond forged in shared words or playful interaction, but in a mutual respect for grief and a quiet understanding of purpose. Arthur, after years of tending to the graveyard, had developed a profound appreciation for silent communication, for the stories told in the bend of a branch or the tilt of a headstone. Barnaby, in his steadfast vigil, was a master of such silent narratives. Arthur's attempts to offer comfort were subtle, respectful of Barnaby's chosen solitude. He would ensure the water bowl was always full, even on days when the taps were frozen. He'd leave dried kibble in a sheltered spot, shielded from the wind, always careful to place it a little distance from Alara's grave, as if not to intrude on Barnaby's sacred space. Sometimes he'd bring a piece of leftover roast chicken from his own dinner, setting it down gently before retreating, watching from a distance as Barnaby cautiously approached the unexpected treat. The dog would sniff it, glance at the grave, then at Arthur, a flicker of something unreadable in his amber eyes before he finally slowly ate. These small acts of kindness were never met with effusive gratitude, no tail wags or licks. Barnaby's acknowledgments were far more subtle, a slightly less wary gaze, a moment longer before turning his attention back to Alara, but Arthur understood. He wasn't seeking affection. He was offering solace, and in Barnaby's acceptance, however reserved, he found a quiet satisfaction. One blustery afternoon, a particularly fierce gust of wind tore a large branch from the ancient weeping willow, sending it crashing down dangerously close to Alara's grave. Barnaby, startled but unharmed, let out a low growl, a rare sound of distress. Arthur, who had been working nearby, rushed over, his old bones protesting the sudden movement. He carefully assessed the damage, his eyes frequently darting to Barnaby, who stood rigid, watching with an intensity that Arthur interpreted as fear for the grave itself. Without a word, Arthur began the arduous task of sawing and dragging away the heavy branch. It was difficult work for a man his age, and he grunted with effort. As he struggled with a particularly stubborn section, he felt a soft nudge against his leg. Barnaby, for the first time, was beside him, not retreating, but simply standing there, a silent, steady presence. He didn't offer help, of course, but his proximity, his shared concern for the grave, was a comfort. It was a moment of unspoken solidarity, two guardians facing a common threat to their hallowed ground. After the branch was cleared, Arthur sat on a nearby bench, catching his breath. Barnaby, instead of returning directly to the grave, lay down a few feet away, his head resting on his paws, his eyes still on Arthur. It was a small but significant shift in their dynamic. A silent understanding had been forged, not just of grief, but of shared guardianship. From that day on, their encounters became a little less distant. Barnaby would sometimes remain near Arthur as he worked, not interfering, but simply observing. And Arthur, in turn, would occasionally sit on the bench near Alara's grave, quietly eating his lunch, Barnaby a silent, watchful companion a few yards away. They were two solitary souls, bound by the quiet reverence of the graveyard and the profound, enduring love for those who rested within its peaceful embrace. Their understanding was deeper than words, a testament to the fact that companionship, in its truest form, often required no verbal articulation at all. As Barnaby's presence became a permanent fixture in Blackwood Cemetery, so too did the stories surrounding him. In a town as old and quiet as Blackwood, legends were easily spun, weaving themselves into the fabric of daily life. The graveyard dog became a local enigma, a subject of hushed conversations in the baker's shop, over pints at the Old Oak Inn, and at Sunday church gatherings. Children, with their boundless imaginations, were the first to imbue Barnaby with an almost mystical quality. They whispered tales of a ghost dog, bound to its master beyond the grave, its eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. They claimed he could understand human speech, that he was a protector of all the spirits within the cemetery, ensuring they rested in peace. While adults often dismissed these fantastical notions, even they couldn't deny the unusual nature of Barnaby's devotion. Some believed he was a manifestation of Alara's own spirit, returned to watch over her grave. Others, more pragmatic, speculated he was simply a deeply traumatized animal, unable to move on from the last place he'd seen his owner. Yet there was an undeniable reverence in their voices when they spoke of him. Farmers and older residents, steeped in local folklore, spoke of soul dogs, ancient protectors believed to guard the passage between worlds. They saw Barnaby as one such creature, a living bridge between the living and the dead, his loyalty a sacred duty. His unyielding vigil through all seasons and weathers only fueled these theories. He never sought food from strangers, rarely accepted comfort, and always returned to his post by Alara's grave. This unwavering dedication set him apart, elevating him from a mere stray to a figure of profound significance. The younger generation, those who had grown up with the internet, saw Barnaby as a poignant viral story waiting to happen. They'd snap discreet photos, sometimes even short videos, posting them online with captions about eternal love and unbreakable bonds. These snippets would occasionally garner attention, drawing curious visitors from neighboring towns who wished to witness the phenomenon of the graveyard watcher for themselves. They came with cameras and respectful whispers, hoping to catch a glimpse of the legendary dog. Barnaby, however, remained largely oblivious to the attention. He would sometimes glance up, his ears twitching, but his focus quickly returned to Alara's grave, the center of his universe. The local newspaper, the Blackwood Chronicle, even ran a small feature on Barnaby, cautiously referring to him as Blackwood's most loyal resident. The article, penned by a young, aspiring journalist, spoke of the dog's steadfastness, his quiet dignity, and the profound impact he had on the community's collective heart. It highlighted how Barnaby had become a symbol of enduring love, a reminder of the bonds that transcend even death. Through all the whispers and legends, through the awe and the pity, Barnaby remained himself, a dog consumed by an eternal love, his every breath a testament to a bond that refused to be severed. He was a quiet living legend, a furry guardian whose presence spoke volumes more than any human word. His story etched not in stone, but in the hearts and minds of the people of Blackwood. Barnaby's solitary vigil was, by choice, absolute. He had no interest in other dogs, no playful nips or chasing games. His world was Alara's grave, and any deviation felt like a betrayal. That was, until the arrival of Whiskers. Whiskers was a scruffy, battle-hardened tabby cat, a survivor of countless alley skirmishes and a connoisseur of discarded fish bones. She was a creature of fierce independence, her emerald eyes holding the wisdom of many lives lived on the fringes. She had frequented the graveyard for years, drawn by the quiet hunting grounds and the occasional mice that scurried amongst the overgrown weeds. Her first encounter with Barnaby was cautious. She had observed him from a safe distance, a curious feline assessing a new, unmoving fixture in her territory. Barnaby, for his part, initially ignored her, his gaze fixed on his usual point. Whiskers, however, was persistent. She was used to larger, more aggressive dogs, and Barnaby's calm, almost melancholic demeanor intrigued her. She began to approach, slowly, tentatively, until one day she simply curled up a few feet from where Barnaby lay, bathing herself with an air of sophisticated indifference. Barnaby, to his own surprise, did not react. He merely shifted his weight, his eyes still on the grave. Whiskers, sensing a truce, continued her grooming, occasionally flicking an ear in his direction. This became their unspoken routine. Whiskers would appear in the late afternoon, a silent shadow slinking through the tombstones, and settle down near Barnaby. Sometimes she would even venture close enough to rub against his thick fur, a soft purring vibration against his side. Barnaby would offer no overt response, no tail wag or lick, but he would not move away. He tolerated her presence, a silent acknowledgement of a shared, if unspoken, solitude. It was a peculiar friendship, one born of proximity and a mutual respect for personal space. Whiskers, with her feline independence, seemed to understand Barnaby's need for isolation better than any human. She didn't demand attention, didn't try to coax him into play. She simply existed alongside him, a warm, purring presence in the vast, quiet expanse of the graveyard. Her presence, subtle as it was, began to chip away at the edges of Barnaby's absolute solitude. He would occasionally watch her hunt, a flicker of something akin to interest in his amber eyes. Sometimes he'd even offer a low, soft rumble in his chest when she caught a particularly elusive mouse, a sound that could almost be interpreted as a silent cheer. Arthur, observing this unexpected companionship, found a quiet joy in it. "Looks like you've made a friend, old boy," he'd murmur to Barnaby, a small smile playing on his lips. He'd sometimes leave out a small dish of milk for Whiskers, alongside Barnaby's kibble, acknowledging the cat's role in Barnaby's life. The stray cat, with her quiet courage and independent spirit, had, in her own unique way, offered Barnaby a small measure of comfort, a gentle reminder that even in profound grief, companionship could still find a way to bloom. She was not a Lara, of course, but she was a living, breathing presence that shared his quiet world, a small, furry anchor in his solitary sea of devotion. And in the vast, silent expanse of the graveyard, their unusual friendship became another quiet legend, a testament to the unexpected ways in which solace can find even the most devoted of hearts. Among the occasional visitors to Blackwood Cemetery was a young girl named Lily. She was 7 years old, with bright, curious eyes and a quiet intensity that often made adults underestimate her. Lily visited the grave of her grandmother, a kind woman who had passed away 2 years prior, leaving a small, aching void in Lily's young heart. Her visits were a ritual, a way to connect with the memory of a love still deeply felt. It was on one of these visits that Lily first truly noticed Barnaby. She had seen him before, of course, a brown blur by the weeping willow, but today something about his stillness, his profound quietude drew her in. He lay curled by the headstone, a picture of absolute devotion, his eyes closed in a peaceful, yet undeniably sorrowful slumber. Lily approached cautiously, her small steps barely disturbing the fallen leaves. She stopped a respectful distance away, her eyes fixed on the dog. She wasn't afraid. There was something in Barnaby's aura that spoke not of aggression, but of deep, quiet sadness, a feeling Lily understood all too well. She sat on the grass, a small, solitary figure mirroring Barnaby's stillness. She didn't try to pet him or call out to him. Instead, she simply watched, her young mind processing the silent language of his unwavering vigil. She saw the way his fur was matted in places, the slight tremor in his old paws, the way he seemed utterly rooted to that one spot. "He's waiting," she murmured to herself, a profound understanding blossoming in her heart. "He's waiting for someone he loves." Lily reached into her small backpack and pulled out a half-eaten sandwich wrapped in paper. She tore off a small piece of ham and carefully placed it on the ground a few feet from Barnaby, then retreated to her original spot. Barnaby, sensing the movement, opened his eyes. He looked at the ham, then at Lily, his amber gaze surprisingly gentle. He remained still for a long moment, then slowly, deliberately rose. He sniffed the offering, looked back at Lily, and then, with a soft sigh, ate the ham. It was a simple gesture, yet it felt like a profound exchange. Lily smiled, a small, shy smile that reached her eyes. She understood that Barnaby wasn't just a hungry stray. He was a grieving soul, and her offering was not just food, but a gesture of shared empathy. From that day forward, Lily's visits to her grandmother's grave always included a stop by Alara's. She would bring small tokens, a smooth, colorful stone she'd found, a small, fragrant flower picked from her garden, or a piece of her lunch. She'd place them carefully near Barnaby, never expecting a response, but always feeling a quiet connection. Barnaby, in turn, began to acknowledge her presence with a gentle blink, sometimes even a soft thump of his tail against the grass, a rare display of emotion. He still didn't leave his post, still didn't engage in playful interaction, but he accepted Lily's quiet offerings, her innocent understanding. She was not a threat, not an intruder, but another small soul who understood the language of loss and the enduring power of love. In the quiet solemnity of the graveyard, a new, gentle connection began to form, bridging the worlds of an old, grieving dog and a young, empathetic girl, both carrying their own silent sorrows. A loyal, scruffy golden retriever-like dog, Barnaby, Lily's visits became a quiet ritual, a balm for both her own young heart and, in a way, for Barnaby's. She understood, with the innate wisdom of a child who has experienced loss, that Barnaby wasn't just sad, he was missing someone deeply. Her grandmother had been her world, a source of endless stories and comforting hugs. Now, her visits to the grave were her way of keeping that connection alive, a silent conversation across the veil. In Barnaby, she saw a kindred spirit, a fellow traveler on the path of remembrance. She never spoke to him in full sentences, but in soft murmurs and gentle coos, the kind of sounds a child makes to a beloved stuffed animal. "Hello, Barnaby," she'd whisper, her voice barely audible above the rustle of leaves. "Are you still waiting?" She'd sit a little closer now, sometimes even leaning against the smooth, cool stone of Alara's headstone, her small hand occasionally reaching out to lightly rest on Barnaby's fur. He would not flinch or pull away. Instead, he would lean into her touch, a deep, rumbling sigh escaping his chest. These were moments of profound, unspoken comfort, two souls finding solace in shared grief. Lily's offerings grew more thoughtful. One day, she brought a small, hand-drawn picture of a dog and a woman holding hands, a crude, but heartfelt representation of what she imagined Barnaby and Alara's life had been like. She carefully tucked it under a stone near Alara's grave. Another time, she left a small, faded blue ribbon, the kind her grandmother used to tie in her hair. Barnaby would sniff these items, his nose twitching, before settling back into his vigil, the small gifts becoming part of the sacred landscape around the grave. Arthur, the caretaker, often observed Lily's interactions from a distance. He had seen countless children in the graveyard, but none had approached Barnaby with such respectful empathy. He noticed how Barnaby, usually so aloof, seemed to soften in Lily's presence, his guard subtly lowered. It was a remarkable transformation, a small crack in the impenetrable wall of his grief. Arthur found himself feeling a quiet sense of hope, a gentle warmth in the solemn atmosphere of the cemetery. He understood that Lily wasn't trying to fix Barnaby's grief. She was simply acknowledging it, sitting with it, offering a silent companionship that was profoundly healing. One particularly cold afternoon, Lily, bundled in a thick coat, noticed Barnaby shivering slightly despite his thick fur. Without a second thought, she took off her bright red scarf, carefully folded it, and placed it gently over Barnaby's back. He looked at her, his amber eyes wide, then slowly, carefully, he settled back down, the warm wool a comforting weight against his cold body. It was a moment of pure, selfless compassion, a small act of love that resonated deeply in the quiet graveyard. Barnaby's long vigil continued, his devotion to Alara unwavering. But now, there was a new thread woven into the fabric of his solitary life, the gentle, understanding presence of a little girl named Lily. She brought him not just food, but a silent form of healing, a quiet reminder that even in the deepest sorrow, there could still be connection, still be comfort, still be a glimmer of hope. In their shared grief, they found a unique form of companionship, a bond that transcended age and species, a testament to the universal language of love and loss. The sky over Blackwood had been brooding for days, a bruised purple blanket hinting at the fury to come. Finally, it broke. A tempest descended upon the cemetery, a violent upheaval of wind and rain that tested the very foundations of the old grounds. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the ancient tombstones in stark, fleeting flashes followed by thunder that rattled the very earth. The weeping willow, Alara's guardian, thrashed violently, its branches whipping like frantic arms in the gale. Rain fell in sheets, turning the ground into a treacherous mire. Leaves, twigs, and even small branches were ripped from trees, scattering across the graves. It was a storm of biblical proportions, one that threatened to uproot everything in its path. Most sane creatures would have sought deep shelter, but Barnaby, true to his unwavering post, remained. He was soaked to the bone, his fur plastered to his body, making him look smaller, more vulnerable. He shivered uncontrollably, not just from the cold, but from the sheer force of the storm. Yet his position by Alara's grave remained resolute. He dug his paws into the muddy earth, bracing himself against the wind, his head bowed, protecting his eyes from the stinging rain. Every now and then he would lift his head, letting out a low, mournful whimper, a sound of profound distress that was almost lost amidst the howling wind. It was a sound that spoke not of fear for himself, but perhaps for the sanctity of his beloved's resting place. Arthur, safe in his small, sturdy cottage on the edge of town, watched the storm rage. His thoughts, however, were not of his own comfort, but of Barnaby. He knew the dog would still be out there, stubbornly clinging to his vigil. A wave of deep concern washed over him. He pictured the old dog, exposed and vulnerable, and a knot of worry tightened in his stomach. He considered venturing out, but the storm was too fierce, the conditions too dangerous for a man his age. He could only watch and worry, and hope that Barnaby would somehow find the strength to endure. Lily, too, was thinking of Barnaby. From her bedroom window, she watched the lightning flash and the rain lash against the glass. "He's still out there," she whispered to her mother, her voice trembling. Her mother, a practical woman, tried to reassure her that dogs were hardy, that Barnaby would find shelter. But Lily knew better. She knew Barnaby wouldn't leave. He never did. She clutched her teddy bear, tears welling in her eyes for the brave, sad dog. Throughout the long, terrifying night, Barnaby held his ground. The storm raged, but his loyalty burned brighter, a fierce, unwavering flame against the darkness. He was a beacon of devotion, a testament to a love that refused to be extinguished by the elements, by fear, or by the sheer force of nature. When the first tentative rays of dawn finally broke through the retreating clouds, painting the sky in soft hues of gray and pink, the cemetery was a scene of devastation. Trees were down, fences were broken, and debris was scattered everywhere. But there, amidst the chaos, still lay Barnaby, curled tightly against Alara's headstone, his body trembling, but his vigil unbroken. He was weary, soaked, and utterly exhausted, but he was still there. The storm had tested him, but it had not, and would not, break his eternal watch. After the storm had passed, leaving behind a trail of disruption, Arthur began the arduous task of clearing the debris. As he worked near the weeping willow, carefully lifting a fallen section of the ancient tree, his hand brushed against something small and hard embedded in the muddy earth. Curious, he dug a little deeper, uncovering a small, ornate wooden box, its surface waterlogged but surprisingly intact. It had clearly been dislodged from beneath the roots of the willow. With a sense of trepidation, Arthur pried open the lid. Inside, nestled amongst dried petals and a few faded photographs, was a small leather-bound diary. It was Alara Vance's. His heart ached with a mixture of reverence and sadness. He knew he shouldn't read it, that it was a private sanctuary, but a compelling curiosity, driven by Barnaby's unwavering devotion, urged him on. He carefully opened the diary to a random page, his eyes scanning the elegant script. The entries were a gentle tapestry of Alara's daily life, her quiet joys, her reflections on nature, and her profound love for Barnaby. One entry, dated a few months before her passing, particularly caught Arthur's eye. "Barnaby watched me today as I sat by the willow. His eyes hold such depths, a loyalty so pure it humbles me. He is more than a companion. He is a part of my soul. I often wonder what he thinks, what he feels. If anything were ever to happen to me, I know he would wait. He would always wait. He is my steadfast star, my eternal comfort." Arthur's eyes welled up. The words resonated with a heartbreaking truth, perfectly explaining Barnaby's relentless vigil. It wasn't just instinct. It was a deep spiritual connection, an understanding that transcended the boundaries of species. Alara had known, had felt, the depth of Barnaby's love, and in a way had almost foreseen his reaction. Another entry spoke of her love for the graveyard, for its peace and history. "This place brings me solace," she had written, "a quiet beauty in the cycle of life and memory. If I am ever to rest, I hope it is here, beneath the gentle gaze of the willow." Arthur closed the diary, a profound understanding settling over him. Barnaby wasn't just guarding a grave. He was guarding a promise, an unspoken covenant of eternal love. The small wooden box also contained a faded photograph of a younger Alara, her arm around a vibrant, playful Barnaby, both smiling joyously. Another photo showed them sitting on the very bench near the weeping willow, Barnaby's head resting on her lap. These images, vibrant with life, contrasted sharply with the solemnity of their current circumstances, yet underscored the depth of their bond. Arthur carefully placed the diary and photographs back into the box, and then, with newfound reverence, reburied it beneath the roots of the willow, exactly where he had found it. He felt like he had been granted a sacred glimpse into a love story, a testament to a connection that defied the finality of death. He looked at Barnaby, who was now awake and watching him with his usual quiet intensity. "She knew, old boy," Arthur whispered, his voice thick with emotion. She truly knew, and Alara's words. Arthur found not just an explanation for Barnaby's unwavering watch, but a deeper appreciation for the profound, mysterious ways in which love binds all living things, even across the ultimate divide. Just as a fragile peace had settled back over Blackwood Cemetery after the storm, a new kind of disturbance began to brew, one far more insidious than any natural disaster. Whispers started in the town council meetings, then grew into concerned murmurs in the local shops. A prominent property developer, Mr. Silas Thorne, A man known for his ruthless efficiency and towering glass constructions had set his sights on the land adjacent to the old cemetery. His proposal, a sprawling, modern shopping complex and apartment block, promising jobs and progress for Blackwood. The initial plans, however, revealed a disturbing detail. To accommodate the necessary access roads and parking facilities, a significant portion of the old cemetery's perimeter would need to be acquired and consequently desecrated. This section included several older, less frequently visited graves, but more importantly, it encroached alarmingly close to the ancient Weeping Willow and, by extension, Alara Vance's resting place, Barnaby's sacred vigil ground. News of the development spread through Blackwood like wildfire, sparking immediate controversy. For many, the cemetery was more than just a burial ground. It was a historical landmark, a peaceful sanctuary, and now home to their beloved graveyard watcher. The idea of disturbing its tranquility, especially the part of it that Barnaby so fiercely protected, stirred a deep sense of outrage. Arthur, upon hearing the news, felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. He had spent his life safeguarding these grounds, and the thought of them being bulldozed for a shopping mall was an affront to everything he held dear. He immediately envisioned the heavy machinery, the noise, the destruction, everything that would shatter the quiet dignity Barnaby had so steadfastly maintained. He knew Barnaby, with his unwavering loyalty, would never abandon his post, even if construction began. The thought of the old dog, distressed and confused amidst the chaos, tore at his heart. Lily, overhearing her parents discussing the council meeting and new buildings, grew increasingly agitated. "They can't touch Barnaby's home," she exclaimed, her young voice filled with the passion that belied her age. She had only a vague understanding of property development, but she understood that her friend's sanctuary was under threat. The thought of Barnaby being scared, or worse, forced to leave, was unbearable. Mr. Thorne, a smooth-talking man in a tailored suit, presented his case to the town council with slick presentations and promises of economic prosperity. He spoke of modernizing Blackwood, of bringing it into the 21st century. The cemetery, he argued, was underutilized land, and some of the older graves could be respectfully relocated to make way for essential infrastructure. His words, though seemingly logical to some, rang hollow and disrespectful to those who valued history and sentiment. The community was divided. Some, desperate for economic growth, saw the development as a necessary evil. Others, however, felt a profound connection to the cemetery and, more specifically, to the silent, furry guardian who had become its heart. The battle lines were drawn. It was no longer just about land. It was about memory, respect, and the quiet, enduring love of a dog that had become the town's most poignant symbol. The threat of progress loomed large, a shadow cast over the peaceful resting places, threatening to shatter the sacred vigil of the graveyard watcher. The proposed development ignited a spark of resistance within Blackwood, a quiet town usually content with its routines. The threat to the cemetery, and by extension, to Barnaby's unwavering vigil, stirred a collective outrage that transcended generational divides. Arthur Jenkins, usually a man of quiet duties, found himself thrust into an unexpected role. He attended town council meetings, his voice, though soft, carrying the weight of decades of stewardship. He spoke not just of historical preservation, but of the profound moral implications of disturbing the resting places of the deceased, and of the unique spiritual significance Barnaby brought to the grounds. "This is more than just a parcel of land," he stated, his gaze unwavering as he addressed the council. "It's a testament to our history, our humanity, and to a love that asks for nothing but to remain undisturbed." Lily, though too young to formally participate, became a powerful, albeit silent, advocate. She started a petition collecting signatures from her schoolmates and their parents, her small hand carefully writing "Save Barnaby's Home" at the top of each sheet. Her earnestness, her unwavering belief in protecting her furry friend, touched the hearts of many. She even drew pictures of Barnaby and Alara's grave, adding them to her petition, making the abstract concept of land development intensely personal. The local newspaper, the Blackwood Chronicle, which had once featured Barnaby as a curiosity, now rallied behind the cause. The journalist who had written the initial piece penned a passionate editorial, detailing Barnaby's story and the potential destruction of his unique sanctuary. Photographs of Barnaby, resolute by Alara's grave, appeared on the front page, tugging at the heartstrings of readers far beyond Blackwood. The community organized. A Save Blackwood Cemetery committee was formed, comprised of concerned citizens, local historians, and environmentalists. They held peaceful protests outside the council chambers, carrying signs adorned with images of Barnaby and pleas for preservation. Online, a social media campaign quickly gained traction, spreading Barnaby's story and the plight of the cemetery to a wider audience. People from other towns, inspired by the dog's loyalty, began sending letters and emails to the council, urging them to reconsider. Mr. Silas Thorne, initially dismissive of what he considered sentimental nonsense, found himself facing an unexpectedly formidable opposition. He had underestimated the power of a small community united by a shared sense of purpose and the profound emotional connection to a loyal dog. His usual tactics of slick presentations and economic promises seemed to falter against the tide of genuine human emotion. Barnaby, oblivious to the political machinations swirling around him, continued his vigil. He still lay by Alara's grave, his amber eyes scanning the familiar rows of tombstones, perhaps sensing a shift in the atmosphere, a heightened energy from the human visitors. He would sometimes watch Lily and Arthur from a distance as they collected signatures or spoke animatedly to others near the cemetery gates, a quiet observer of the growing resistance. The graveyard, once a place of quiet solitude, had become a focal point of community activism. The threat to Barnaby's home had inadvertently awakened a sleeping giant in Blackwood, uniting its people in a powerful stand for history, for sentiment, and for the enduring power of a dog's eternal love. Amidst the growing battle for the cemetery, a more immediate and heartbreaking concern began to emerge: Barnaby's health. The old dog, already showing the signs of his advanced years and the harsh life he'd lived outdoors, began to falter. His movements became slower, more deliberate, and sometimes a visible tremor ran through his body even on warm days. His once thick fur, though still a testament to his resilience, seemed duller, and his once bright amber eyes now held a milky haze, a sign of failing eyesight. Arthur, who had been observing Barnaby closely for years, was the first to notice the alarming decline. Barnaby's appetite, always modest, diminished further. He would often leave the food Arthur provided untouched, merely sniffing at it before returning to his curled position by Alara's grave. His breath grew shallower, and his sleeps became longer, deeper, punctuated by soft, restless whimpers. The storm, though he had bravely endured it, had taken a significant toll on his aging body. The cold, the relentless wind, the sheer physical exertion of bracing against the elements had worn him down. Arthur tried to intervene more directly. He gently approached Barnaby, offering him soft, palatable food, even trying to administer some basic, over-the-counter supplements he'd found at the pet store. Barnaby, though never aggressive, would politely refuse, turning his head away, his focus still always on Alara's headstone. It was as if he knew his time was drawing short, and his only remaining purpose was to fulfill his sacred watch until his very last breath. Lily, too, noticed the change in her furry friend. Barnaby no longer greeted her offerings with a soft thump of his tail. He simply lay there, his eyes opening slowly at her approach, a profound weariness etched onto his face. Her heart ached to see him so weak, so vulnerable. She would sit beside him, gently stroking his head, murmuring soft words of comfort, feeling the fragile beat of his heart beneath her hand. The community, engrossed in their fight against the development, also began to notice. The local newspaper ran a small update expressing concern for Blackwood's most loyal resident. People would stop by the cemetery, not just to see the legendary dog, but to offer silent prayers or leave small, comforting blankets near his resting spot. The veterinarian from Blackwood, Dr. Eleanor Vance, no relation to Ilara, but a kind woman nonetheless, offered to examine Barnaby. Arthur managed to gently guide Barnaby towards her, a rare instance of the dog allowing himself to be led away from his post for a few minutes. Dr. Vance confirmed Arthur's fears. Barnaby was suffering from advanced age, arthritis, and general wear and tear from his prolonged outdoor vigil. His heart was weakening and his overall health was precarious. "He's lived a remarkable life of devotion," she told Arthur softly, "but his body is giving out. All we can do now is make him as comfortable as possible." The news hit Arthur and Lily hard. The fight for the cemetery now felt even more urgent, a race against time to ensure Barnaby could live out his remaining days in peace in the place he loved most. The thought of him passing away amidst the noise and destruction of construction was unbearable. Barnaby, the steadfast guardian, was fading, his eternal watch becoming a fragile, precious flicker against the encroaching darkness, making the fight for his home an even more desperate plea. As Barnaby's strength waned, Lily's devotion to him intensified, becoming a quiet, powerful force. She spent every spare moment at the cemetery not playing or exploring, but simply being with Barnaby. Her visits were no longer just about leaving offerings. They were about providing comfort, a small, warm presence in his fading world. She would bring a thermos of warm chicken broth, carefully spoon-feeding it to him, one small sip at a time. Barnaby, usually so resistant to sustenance, would accept it from her, his eyes, though clouded, holding a flicker of gratitude. She would sit for hours, gently stroking his head, her small fingers carefully untangling the mats in his fur. She'd hum soft lullabies she remembered her grandmother singing, her voice a gentle, soothing melody in the quiet graveyard. She read aloud from her favorite storybooks, her young voice narrating tales of brave heroes and magical lands, hoping the familiar rhythm of her words would bring him a moment of peace. Barnaby would lie with his head in her lap, his breathing shallow, yet a profound sense of calm would settle over him in her presence. It was as if Lily's pure, unconditional love was a gentle balm to his aging body and weary spirit. Arthur, watching these interactions, was deeply moved. He had seen the raw power of grief, but he was now witnessing the profound, healing power of innocent compassion. Lily, with her unwavering tenderness, was giving Barnaby a final precious gift: comfort, companionship, and a profound sense of being cherished in his last days. He knew that for Barnaby, who had spent so long giving love, receiving it so openly must have been a revelation. The community, hearing of Barnaby's declining health, sent messages of support and small gifts: soft blankets, warm scarves, even homemade remedies for his arthritis. The Save Blackwood Cemetery Committee rallied further, using Barnaby's fragile state as a powerful argument against the development. "We cannot let this loyal soul, who has given so much to our town, be disturbed in his final moments," their spokesperson declared at a public meeting, the words resonating deeply with the gathered crowd. Lily, however, was oblivious to the larger political fight. Her world had narrowed to Barnaby, to the urgent need to provide him with every ounce of comfort she could muster. One afternoon, she brought her own small pillow and blanket, intending to spend the night by his side. Arthur, finding her curled up next to Barnaby as dusk fell, gently persuaded her to return home, promising he would watch over the dog. He understood her desire to stay, but the graveyard at night was no place for a child. He watched her walk away, her small frame burdened by a love so pure, so profound. Barnaby's life, which had been defined by his singular devotion to Elara, was now, in its twilight, being touched by the selfless love of a young girl. Lily's tender devotion was a testament to the ripple effect of love, a beautiful echo of the bond Barnaby had shared with Elara. She was not just caring for him, she was honoring his legacy, ensuring that his final days were filled with the warmth of human kindness, a quiet act of grace in the solemn landscape of the cemetery. In her small hands, she held not just his comfort, but a piece of his enduring heart, a testament to the enduring power of compassion. Barnaby's fading health, coupled with the ongoing development controversy, propelled his story beyond the quiet confines of Blackwood. Local news reports evolved into regional features, and then, thanks to the power of social media and dedicated activists, into a national conversation. The image of the loyal dog, clinging to his beloved's grave despite his advanced age, and the threat of bulldozers became a powerful symbol. It wasn't just a story about a dog. It was a story about loyalty, remembrance, respect for the past, and the soul of a community. Journalists from larger cities descended upon Blackwood, seeking interviews with Arthur, with Lily's parents, and with the members of the Save Blackwood Cemetery Committee. They filmed Barnaby carefully and respectfully from a distance, capturing his frail yet steadfast presence by Elara's grave. The footage, poignant and deeply moving, aired on national television, generating an outpouring of public sympathy and support. The public outcry was immense. Thousands of letters, emails, and phone calls flooded the offices of the town council and Mr. Silas Thorne's development company. Online petitions garnered hundreds of thousands of signatures, demanding the preservation of Blackwood Cemetery and the protection of Barnaby. Celebrities, touched by the story, lent their voices to the cause, sharing the tale with their vast followings and urging action. The narrative of the graveyard watcher had tapped into a universal human desire to believe in enduring love and to protect the vulnerable. Mr. Thorne, initially confident in his ability to push through the development, found himself facing an unprecedented public relations nightmare. His company, usually impervious to local opposition, was now being vilified on a national scale. The image of Barnaby, the loyal, suffering dog, became a powerful counterpoint to his sleek, modern vision of progress. Every news report, every social media post, painted him as the heartless developer attempting to destroy a sacred space and harm an innocent, beloved animal. The town council, too, felt the immense pressure. What had started as a local land dispute had escalated into a moral dilemma with national implications. Council members, who had initially leaned towards approving the development for its economic benefits, now found their constituents, and indeed the entire country, demanding a different outcome. Their phones rang incessantly, their inboxes overflowed. The quiet town of Blackwood was now at the center of a very public debate, its heartbeat synchronized with the fading pulse of its most famous resident. Arthur, though weary from the constant media attention, felt a glimmer of hope. He spoke eloquently and passionately to anyone who would listen, recounting Barnaby's story, Elara's love, and the sacred history of the cemetery. Lily, though still shy, found her voice too, telling a reporter, "Barnaby belongs here. He's waiting for his person. You can't make him leave." Her simple words, delivered with a child's unwavering conviction, were more powerful than any legal argument. The fate of Blackwood Cemetery and Barnaby's final resting place now hung in the balance, a poignant symbol of a town's fight to preserve its soul against the relentless march of modern progress. The quiet devotion of one dog had ignited a fierce collective passion, turning a local graveyard into a battleground for the heart of a nation. The national attention brought an unexpected, profound development to the Save Blackwood Cemetery campaign. Among the thousands of people moved by Barnaby's story was a woman named Clara Vance. living hundreds of miles away in a bustling city. She was Alara Vance's younger sister, a distant relative with whom Alara had lost touch years ago after a family disagreement. Clara had seen the news reports, recognized the name Alara Vance on the headstone, and then, with a jolt, recognized the loyal, scruffy dog. Tears welled in her eyes as she saw Barnaby, older and frail, still keeping vigil. The sight of Barnaby, a living testament to her sister's memory, stirred a deep emotional response in Clara. The old family rift, which had seemed so important years ago, now felt trivial in the face of such profound, enduring love. She felt a surge of regret for the lost years, but also an overwhelming need to hope. She immediately contacted the Save Blackwood Cemetery Committee, identifying herself and offering her full support. Her arrival in Blackwood was a quiet affair, but her presence brought a new layer of legitimacy and emotional depth to the campaign. She met Arthur, shaking his hand warmly, tears in her eyes as he recounted Barnaby's story in person. She spent time with Lily, holding the child's hand as they both watched Barnaby from a respectful distance. Clara recognized the same gentle spirit in Lily that she remembered in her sister. Clara Vance, a poised and articulate woman, gave a powerful press conference. She spoke not just as a concerned citizen, but as Alara's sister, lending a personal, intimate voice to the story. My sister, Alara, was a woman of immense kindness and quiet strength, she began, her voice steady despite her emotion. And Barnaby was her shadow, her heart. To see his unwavering devotion, even after all these years, is a testament to the extraordinary bond they shared. To desecrate this sacred ground, to disturb his vigil, would be to dishonor not just Alara's memory, but the very essence of loyalty and love. Her words resonated deeply. Her personal connection to Alara and Barnaby added an undeniable weight to the campaign, transforming the abstract fight into a deeply human, deeply personal one. She brought with her not only her powerful testimony, but also legal expertise and financial resources, hiring a team of lawyers specializing in historical preservation and environmental law. The Save Blackwood Cemetery Committee, now bolstered by Clara's involvement, felt a renewed surge of hope. The tide was beginning to turn. Mr. Silas Thorne's position became increasingly untenable. Not only was he facing a national backlash and mounting legal challenges, but now he was directly confronting the grieving sister of the very person whose grave his development would impact. The narrative had shifted irrevocably. It was no longer just about land value. It was about human stories, family legacies, and the sacred bond between a woman and her dog. The quiet town of Blackwood, once a forgotten corner of the world, had found its voice, spurred on by the unwavering devotion of a dog and the unexpected return of a forgotten family member. Clara Vance's arrival was a profound echo from the past, a hand reaching out from a forgotten connection, helping to ensure that Barnaby's eternal watch would not be in vain, and that Alara's memory and the love they shared would forever be preserved. The combined force of public outcry, the media spotlight, the legal challenges mounted by Clara Vance, and the unwavering dedication of the Blackwood community proved too powerful for Mr. Silas Thorne and his development company. After weeks of intense pressure and mounting legal fees, the developer formally announced the withdrawal of his proposal to acquire any part of Blackwood Cemetery. The news spread through the town like a joyous whisper, a collective sigh of relief. The Save Blackwood Cemetery Committee held a celebratory yet respectful gathering at the cemetery gates. Arthur, his eyes shining with unshed tears, stood beside Clara Vance, who embraced Lily, the young girl who had started it all with her innocent petition. Speeches were made, thanking everyone for their efforts, but everyone knew the true hero was Barnaby, the steadfast guardian whose loyalty had galvanized them all. The town council, chastened by the public uproar, not only rejected any future development proposals for the cemetery, but also passed a new ordinance designating Blackwood Cemetery as a protected historical and natural landmark. This ensured its preservation for generations to come, safeguarding its tranquility and its unique ecosystem. Furthermore, inspired by Barnaby's story, the council approved funding for a small, tasteful memorial garden near Alara's grave, a place for quiet reflection and a permanent tribute to enduring love. The memorial garden was designed to blend seamlessly with the existing landscape, featuring native plants, a comfortable bench, and a simple, elegant stone plaque. The plaque, placed near Alara's headstone, bore a touching inscription in loving memory of Alara Vance and her faithful companion, Barnaby, whose eternal watch became a testament to unwavering love. May their bond inspire us all. It was a beautiful, fitting tribute, acknowledging not just Alara, but the extraordinary dog who had kept her memory alive. Barnaby, frail but still present, was brought to the unveiling of the plaque. He was carefully carried by Arthur, his old bones no longer able to manage the walk. He lay quietly on a soft blanket, surrounded by the faces of the people he had, unwittingly united. His eyes, though dim, seemed to take in the scene, perhaps sensing the shift in the atmosphere, the profound sense of peace and victory. Lily sat beside him, gently stroking his head, her eyes brimming with a mixture of joy and a lingering sadness for his fading strength. Clara Vance made a heartfelt speech, thanking the community and reflecting on her sister's legacy. She announced that she would be setting up a trust in Alara's and Barnaby's names to ensure the ongoing maintenance of the cemetery and the memorial garden, and to support local animal shelters. The resolution of the development threat brought a profound sense of closure and healing to Blackwood. The cemetery, once just a place of rest, had become a vibrant symbol of community spirit, of the enduring power of love, and of the quiet heroism of a loyal dog. Barnaby's sanctuary was preserved, his eternal watch honored, and his story etched forever into the heart of the town he had so steadfastly protected. With the cemetery secured and a memorial garden established, a new gentle rhythm settled into Barnaby's final days. He was still the graveyard watcher, his heart still anchored to Alara's grave, but his vigil was now imbued with a different kind of peace. He was no longer a lonely sentinel fighting against the elements and threats. He was a cherished icon, surrounded by a community that understood and revered his love. Arthur made sure Barnaby was as comfortable as possible. He built a small, insulated dog bed, softly lined, and placed it discreetly by Alara's headstone, shielding it from the harshest winds. He continued to bring him nourishing food, often hand-feeding him when Barnaby was too weak to eat on his own. Barnaby, in his fragile state, seemed to accept these comforts with a quiet grace, his eyes often meeting Arthur's with an expression of profound, unspoken gratitude. Lily remained his most constant companion. Her small hands were a familiar, comforting presence, stroking his fur, holding his paw. She would often lie beside him, sharing her quiet thoughts, her simple presence a powerful antidote to his lifelong solitude. Barnaby, in turn, seemed to find a profound solace in her company. He would sometimes rest his head on her lap, his breathing shallow, yet a deep contentment emanating from him. Her innocence, her unwavering kindness, had opened a small crack in his grief, allowing new love to seep in. The community continued to visit, but their interactions were no different. No longer driven by curiosity or concern for his survival, they came to pay their respects, to offer quiet blessings, and to sit in contemplation of the profound love he represented. They brought flowers for Alara's grave, and sometimes a gentle pat for Barnaby, which he would now occasionally accept with a soft blink. He was no longer a dog to be pitied, but a living legend to be honored. Clara Vance, Alara's sister, also made regular visits. She would sit on the new bench in the memorial garden, sharing stories of Alara with Lily and Arthur, bringing a vibrant, living quality to Alara's memory. She would gently pat Barnaby, a silent acknowledgement of the bond he shared with her sister. a bond that had now, ironically, reconnected her to her own family past. Barnaby, in his twilight years, had found a gentle acceptance he had not sought, but profoundly deserved. His devotion to Alara remained the core of his being, but the edges of his solitary world had softened. He was no longer just Alara's dog. He was Blackwood's dog, a symbol of eternal love, cherished and protected by the community he had unwittingly united. His days were filled with warmth, comfort, and the gentle touch of those who had come to understand the depth of his heart. He was truly living out his final days in peace, surrounded by love, his long vigil now a shared guardianship, a testament to the enduring power of compassion and the unbreakable bonds of the heart. One crisp autumn morning, as the first golden leaves began to fall from the ancient weeping willow, Barnaby did not stir. Arthur, arriving for his morning rounds, found him curled peacefully by Alara's headstone, his body still, his eyes gently closed. He had passed away in his sleep, his long, unwavering vigil finally complete. There was no struggle, no pain, just a quiet, dignified surrender. A final breath exhaled in the place he had so fiercely protected for so long. Arthur knelt, his hand trembling as he gently stroked Barnaby's fur one last time. A profound sadness washed over him, but also a sense of peace. Barnaby had fulfilled his promise, his eternal watch unbroken until the very end. He had waited, as Alara had known he would, and now he was finally at rest, reunited in spirit with the woman he had loved beyond measure. Lily arrived shortly after, her usual bright morning greeting dying on her lips as she saw Arthur's posture. She rushed to Barnaby's side, her small hand reaching for his, only to find him cold and still. Tears welled in her eyes, silent and profound. She lay her head on his motionless body, sobbing softly, her heart aching with the loss of her gentle, furry friend. But even in her grief, she understood. Barnaby was no longer in pain. He was with Alara. The news of Barnaby's passing spread quickly through Blackwood, met with a collective sigh of sorrow and a shared sense of profound respect. The local newspaper dedicated its entire front page to his story, with a poignant photograph of him by Alara's grave. People from all over town, and indeed from further afield, came to the cemetery, leaving flowers, notes, and even small dog toys by Alara's headstone, creating a beautiful, spontaneous memorial. A quiet, dignified ceremony was held for Barnaby, attended by Arthur, Lily, and her family, Clara Vance, and countless members of the Blackwood community. He was laid to rest in the memorial garden, beside Alara's grave, beneath the spreading boughs of the weeping willow. A small, simple stone was placed there, bearing his name, Barnaby, the graveyard watcher. Forever loved, forever loyal. The story of Barnaby, the graveyard watcher, became an indelible part of Blackwood's history, a legend whispered through generations. He was more than just a dog. He was a symbol, a testament to the enduring power of unconditional love, a reminder that some bonds transcend even the finality of death. His loyalty had not only honored Alara's memory, but had also galvanized a community, teaching them about compassion, perseverance, and the importance of protecting what is truly sacred. Years later, Lily, now a young woman, would often visit the cemetery. She would sit on the bench in the memorial garden, looking at the two stones, Alara's and Barnaby's, side by side. She would remember the quiet comfort of his fur, the wisdom in his amber eyes, and the profound lesson he had taught her about love. The weeping willow still stood tall, its branches swaying gently in the breeze, a silent guardian over the two souls forever united beneath its ancient gaze. Barnaby's watch was eternal, not just in the quiet earth, but in the hearts of all who remembered him, a timeless tale of a dog's unwavering devotion, echoing softly through the hallowed grounds of Blackwood Cemetery, forever and always.